trends. And my purpose tonight is to share a little bit of context, because I think that's helpful. A lot of the words thrown around with stormwater and flooding, we can get lost in the jargon, but a little bit of context, a little bit more about some of the recent activity that Keith shared about, but also some upcoming opportunities, many of which are attached to some funding to address stormwater, using a relatively new strategy to manage flooding and improve water quality, and that's called nature-based infrastructure. Thank you for your time. I appreciate your patience. This is brief, I promise, but I wanted to move through a little bit of, like I said, a little bit of context. So when I say stormwater, what do I mean? And that's any time that it rains or any sort of precipitation, really, in Georgia for us, most of the time for us that's rain, that has the potential to become runoff or to gather because it falls on a surface that can't absorb it. So be thinking about parking lots, buildings, roadways, any of those things. They're called impervious surfaces, but they don't actually let the water move back in the ground. And all the water that's generated from that is called stormwater. And it's a challenge throughout Georgia, but it's becoming an increasing challenge in coastal Georgia, particularly in the lower coastal plain, places like Reidsville. Our soils, the hydrology here, changes in how development has happened over time makes it right for it to be a challenge. Now, this is a photo down on Tybee, and this is when folks start talking about flooding, this is what they think about. This was shortly after Hurricane Matthew. A lot of this is ocean water, but it's also that mixture of storm water, and it's causing a mess. But in addition to just those natural hazards type situations, this is a random Tuesday in March in Brunswick, a little bit further south. A residential street, a business corridor, community center that no one can access because the street's flooded. And one of the things you can't see from the picture is all the pollutants that get mobilized with it. Sediment, fertilizer from people's yards or the sidewalk when they fertilize the sidewalk, pathogens for when you don't want to pick up after the pet, all the legacy pollutants that have been in the soil over time, and it's not a lot different here, right? So I don't have to tell y'all see what this looks like in Reidsville. Our soils here, also we have shallow water table, water's real close to the surface, so after it rains, this is becoming an increasing challenge. And it doesn't just occur with a storm. Now, forgive me, this is a messy slide, but when you look at these center sections, all of those, that red piece of the pie are streams, lakes, beaches that are not supporting their use. So you can't swim in them, you can't fish in them, you can't use them for drinking water because they have some sort of impairment. Well, all of these are the impairments, the reason that they can't be used, and all of that blue is the pollutants that are attached to stormwater, that non-point source pollution. So there's long-term impacts beyond just that afternoon storm. And the unfortunate thing is it's going to continue to be a challenge. As we change community, as we look to develop the research as well as our lived experience says that as we get more of those surfaces, more of those paved roads, which are great, we need that. That reduces the erosion. I will get off my soapbox for all the reasons that we need that sort of development, but it changes how the water moves in the landscape. So, fortunately, with nature-based infrastructure, this complex problem of dealing with stormwater, there's some more resources at hand. Oh man, my video didn't work. There we go. So we can still use traditional things, pipes, roads, ditches, all of that sort of stuff to move water, but we're also looking at a whole suite of new types of technology that use vegetation, that use soil, that use permeable pavement, that allows the water to get back in the ground, that improves water quality, but also reduces that flood risk. So there's the 30,000 foot overview for the challenge. And there's obviously some people in Reidsville that cared about this, probably more than have been vocal to this point, but there are several residents that have brought this to the attention of Anthropocene Alliance. Keith mentioned that. And their sole purpose is to really rally around community and organize support to tackle things like flooding and a whole host of other environmental impacts. And they have been gracious to bring the technical expertise of folks like Sherwood Design Engineers and Biohabitats. Sherwood's a civil engineering firm outside of Atlanta. Biohabitats is a restoration company with a passion for ecological stewardship. Leaders all around, as well as some more local folks like myself and the Altamaha River Keeper. And they've been doing some work with a few smaller pots of money, a few grants. They've already been awarded to take a look at what's going on. Check out where the stormwater is moving, what flood characteristics. I mentioned all of the soils work. And this does a great job of giving you a little bit more of the timeline, and in the interest and the graciousness of your patience, y'all can take a further look at it. But I want to point you to some of the activities that have already been going on that Mr. Keith mentioned. Lots of sharing of information, gathering information from residents, looking at maps and soils and walking around Reidsville, opportunities to learn a little bit more about how do you protect water quality, how do you even know what's there, Altamaha River Keeper, offering some of those resources. All of that ultimately to develop a restorative landscape plan. And that is just a draft of the cover, but the whole focus of the plan is to chart a course. So think of it as the roadmap moving forward to move this disconnected infrastructure, ditches, poor soil, infiltration, all of these pieces to a more connected system that's connected by those nature-based infrastructure, those linkage points. And that could look like some of those things that I mentioned before, but there's lots of other solutions that could be employed too. So as I move to kind of wrapping things up and avoid being too long-winded for tonight, how do we move forward to those solutions?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may, but can I tell you about some of these? I'm sure you do. We're in really unprecedented time. There's more funding available than there has ever been before with regard to support some of those resources. And before I get too far ahead of myself, I've already talked about some of those, the people and the scientific expertise that is there, and they're willing to work and engage and try to move alongside the city to access policy pieces, design guidance that's being updated by state agencies, as well as Coastal Resilience Fund money, Building Resilient Infrastructure Communities Fund money, non-point source implementation. But I could go on for days about these different pots of money that are similar to some of those other resources that help us move to that. And so my purpose was to share some of the information and introduce kind of how it's moving, but I certainly want to entertain some questions and just encourage the council to think about how you might want to engage in this process, because soon this plan is moving toward completion, and there's going to be lots of opportunities that you could take advantage of, and it will provide a really good foundation, kind of scaffolding and moving things forward, if that's something that everybody's willing to pursue. Sorry, Ms. Jackson, that was longer than I intended. What questions do you have?
That was one of my questions is, does your program piggyback on stuff that we already currently got going? Like we have a USDA loan that's gonna speak to the infrastructure of clean water and that's gonna speak to new piping, all new stuff. So can you pool these together with USDA? Like, can it be pooled together? And then we have a current GFA award that we're waiting to claim.
Fantastic.
For new water meters. Do y'all have something that we can pool together?
Absolutely, yes. So the thing about a lot of the federal funding is you're not going to be able to use those for match, but as you're working on those projects, a lot of the in-kind work of city and county staff, leveraging some of those resources, mentioning those in proposals moving forward actually get you further along being a better candidate to access. So yeah, I think that's what gets me excited is that you're in a really good spot to take advantage of a whole lot. And yeah, your position.
Do you have a timeline on when these things have to be applied for or specifics?
Yes. Well, and it also, that's one of the things I think this group of folks would be really interested in knowing is what are the needs and how you want to engage, and then we can find an opportunity to fit it. Because I can think of 10 in the next 6 to 8 months, ranging from 50,000 to a couple million that can all leverage those resources.
How much matching that's gonna be, do you know?
It depends on the fund. There are several right now for communities that qualify as underserved that have very little to no match. There are several others that require a 40% match or a 50% match. Most of that you can get in kind. So you can utilize staff time or other resources to help meet your match requirements. But that would be something definitely to consider as you explore different options. But yeah, the stormwater piece, I like to think of it as a three-legged stool. You've got your water infrastructure, you've got your wastewater infrastructure, and that stormwater piece is kind of the third wheel that really kind of connects a lot of your infrastructure. And you can leverage a lot of it, especially if you're already doing that type of work.
I have a question. So is it
Anthropocene Alliance.
So what Mr. Jackson, I know we've talked before.
Yes.
So what is y'all's role in this?
So we don't represent Anthropocene Alliance.
Oh, you don't?
Struggle
Okay.
to say that.
Okay.
No, I'm with the University of Georgia.
Okay.
And my role is exactly this. I work with all sorts of Georgia communities to help access these resources. Anthropocene Alliance serves in a similar space. They're an environmental justice organization, and a lot of their focus is to help community kind of from the ground up. And I don't want to speak out of turn in their space, but they do a lot of taking needs like identified by residents here in Reidsville and connecting them to people, to dollars, just they're problem solvers of sorts. Yeah.
And one of the grants that she wanted to share was a community grant, community change grant.
Yeah.
And that'd be something that you definitely want to try to at least inquire about. Ms. Harriet.
Yes, Ms. Harriet with the Anthropocene Alliance. Harriet Festing is their executive director, and that's one of the ones that she's mentioned. But a lot of these grants help you leverage whatever the focus is. You know, if there's a flooding issue at the school, then you bet your bottom dollar are going to help do some education in the classroom. If it's local business, then speaking with the DDA and trying to help look at all the resources, not just the flooding aspect. And a lot of the community change grant has some of those leveraging aspects too. So, other questions for me? I'm happy to pass on her contact information if you'd like to talk to her.
Certainly.
How can we engage with y'all? How would you like for us to engage with you all? I've talked to Miss Jacqueline a little bit, or we've emailed about it, but how would you like for us to engage with you separately from in privacy?
I would turn that around.
When we're ready,
How would you like? I mean, happy to.
Do we come to you whenever we're ready to apply? Do we come to you when I have an idea? Do I come to you when I say, hey, we got a issue?
I think the best thing, if you're open to it, is to allow the group to share this plan as it's being developed and to get your input. There's nobody that knows the needs better than the folks that represent those people.
That's what I was asking in terms of your role in it. Are you all taking the lead with it and working with us? Or do we take the lead and we come to you?
Which would you rather? Well, I mean, there is interest in moving forward, and there are some very capable folks. So if you would like, we can start with being the lead and bringing that in and incorporating what you would like to see. And then at some point, if you say, you know what, we're invested in this and this is ours and y'all have been really great, we'll keep you updated. I think everybody's gonna be okay with that too.
So is there a cost for you all or what?
Not under these. This is covered.
Okay.
So, nope, it's all on the house, which is part of the resource. Particularly, I mean, I won't belabor it too long, but you've got some really great resources already kind of coming together.
So this plan that is being put together, how long will that plan take?
So, and Miss Jackie and or Keith, y'all can correct me. I think the current timeline is through summer of 2024. And so now's a great time to engage as it's moving toward final draft, looking at pieces, seeing where the gaps are, seeing what's missing, because that plan will position you very well for some of those next funding opportunities. And it would be great to be in an open dialogue so that that plan and those opportunities align with what y'all want to do next. And linking them up to things.
Well, one issue we've been talking about in here as far as flooding goes is behind that post office.
Oh, the one.
Yeah. So we have a lot of our storm drains that don't function well.
Right.
They're clogged up over the years of sediment and leaves, debris, and they're not functioning properly. So that's one place we need to look at trying to restore some of that as well as other places that we need to look at.
Yeah, and that infrastructure behind it, like what interests me in what you're saying is maybe doing some community planning. I know it was mentioned one time about downtown parking, and if building up a parking lot is gonna create an environment where flooding's not gonna happen, that might be something to look at.
Or building a parking lot that has some things in it to mitigate for some of that flooding might be a really neat, particularly if we use it to educate folks about why that's there. There's a really great opportunity that GFA, as well as the Georgia Department of Environmental Protection, that has to do some of that inventory assessment and looking at what's there and what's clogged and how, and then similarly, the Environmental Protection Division of DNR also has an implementation grant, so looking at ways to design that parking lot so that it will handle it, and also use it as a demonstration. Maybe it's something that we can construct with a local contractor and have a community event. There's lots of fun things to think about.
Some of the same entities that you have here who were at the GMA listening session, and a lot of these folks were there. They were there, and we've got numbers and stuff too as well. Some of the names that we can contact as well with that.
Yeah, that would be
Especially
fantastic.
Gina and Jeepa, most of them were there.
Well, and I'm sure they'll be excited to have
Yeah.
some of that further
We just
conversation.
need to reach
because
out
They're
and
looking,
start the ball process for us.
they're looking for some of that.
Thank you for everything.
I appreciate your time, and I have a stack of cards that I'm gonna leave, and y'all feel free to contact, and as you think about how you wanna engage with this group, I'm sure they'll be back if since there's interest, but yes, thank you again.